All right, thanks so much, Brian. And joining us now is Notre Dame's Charles and Jill Fischer Provost, Lynn Miranda. Lynn, welcome to Notre Dame Day. And your first year has been a bit of a wild ride, from becoming Notre Dame Provost in the early stages of a pandemic and really helping the university work through it all while trying to get to know your faculty and the university. So we all want to know, what has your first year been like?
Well, you use the phrase wild ride, and I think I use that phrase myself all the time. That's exactly right. So it's been this very interesting combination of, on the one hand, getting to know people incredibly well, incredibly quickly around all the issues we needed to deal with COVID-19. And at the same time, not having the opportunity to get to know all kinds of other aspects of individuals that you're working with, as well as the departments and colleges and schools and alums and university friends, all of those sorts of things. So it's been this odd combination of intense interaction, getting to know people very deeply. I have a standing joke that Shannon Cullinan, who I understand you're going to be interviewing next, that he and I are like Lucy and Ethel. We're so tightly knit and going back and forth on all kinds of issues. You should ask him whether he thinks of himself as Lucy or Ethel. Anyway, it's been wonderful. This is a great university. Even though I started in the middle of a pandemic, this is a great university that wants to make a meaningful contribution to the world. Every single person here wants to make that contribution, and we are figuring out ways to do that even in the middle of a pandemic. So it's exciting, it's meaningful, it's enjoyable, it's challenging, it's all the right things.
And it's been such a tough time too, but you're making the most of it. So what are some of the other kind of priorities you're thinking about as we move beyond COVID-19?
Yeah, so Caroline, I have been talking with the deans and the department chairs and faculty and students about this idea that we just don't want to survive COVID, like come out the other end and go, phew, we survived it. We actually want to come out of COVID bigger, stronger, better, faster. So we're constantly trying to think of all the innovations we've put into place with COVID, which things do we want to keep because we're better because of them. At the same time, we want to do things besides think about adjustments to COVID. We want to think more broadly and more aspirationally about the university. So we're in the middle of a initiative called Moment to See, Courage to Act, which is encouraging everybody in the community to sort of take a moment to stop and reflect and really see this moment that we're living through with the pandemic, with the economic crisis, with the racial and social justice crisis, with the climate change crisis, this polyvalent crisis time that we are in, to really see it and recognize it and name the thing that each individual can contribute to, and then start to name the things that we as a university can contribute to. And then as we have had that moment to see, we then have to have the courage to act. Mm-hmm. And all of the different components that we're working on right now will play into the strategic plan for the university. And the moment to see, courage to act language comes from a combination of words written by the Holy Father, as well as words that are in the constitutions of the Holy Cross. So it's deeply tied to our mission as a university.
And in the midst of all that, you testified before a Senate committee in Washington, D.C. just last week about some ways that we can encourage more young people into STEM fields, particularly women and underrepresented minorities. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So there's a very important piece of legislation in front of the Senate right now, and of course in front of the House of Representatives as well, eventually, called the Endless Frontier Act. And it's a piece of legislation that's all about doubling down on our investment in science and engineering research. It's incredibly important for our country. It's important for our national security. It's important for our national competitiveness. And it's important if we're going to address the great societal challenges that we face. One of the keys to making sure that we're able to address all of these things is being able to tap into the full breadth of talent that's available in our country and internationally. And that means that we need to make sure that we are creating the environment that will have a full cohort of women and a full cohort of individuals from underrepresented groups. So as a sample statistic, there are about 5 million people employed in computing jobs of one type or another in the United States. Despite the fact that women make up 40% of the workforce in general, 47% of the workforce in general, they only make up 24% of the computing workforce, and underrepresented minorities make up 15% of that computing workforce. So we need to find ways to attract and retain and create positive environments for women and minorities to stay in STEM fields.
That is such an important initiative, and thank you so much for traveling down to D.C. to do that for us. And Lynn, we want to thank you for joining us today.